If you've ever heard people speaking about the magical LAMBDA function in Excel, and you've had a quick look at it and then quickly retreated because it all looks too complicated, then this is the video for you. Because what we're going to do in this lesson is I'm going to show you how the LAMBDA function works, how you can start using it immediately, and really how simple it is when you break it down. So if that sounds like something that you're going to be interested in, then please keep watching. Now, the LAMBDA function in Excel is considered to be one of the more advanced Excel functions. But just because it's advanced, it doesn't mean it's out of reach for regular Excel users. And the LAMBDA function can be so useful. Now, the primary reason for its existence is to help people change lengthy formulas into user-friendly functions. So what we're essentially doing is we're creating our own functions in Excel. I think most of us are used to using things like sum, count, average. Those are pre-built functions that are available in Excel for anybody to use, but we can create our own functions using LAMBDA. Now, if you're still slightly confused, let me break down the basic principles of LAMBDA so you can understand why it's so useful. Now, let's say we have quite a lengthy formula in Excel. And you can see here that I've got a sort by formula that uses unique and sum ifs, and you can see that we have some cell ranges in there. Now, you don't need to worry too much about what this is exactly doing. I'm really just trying to show you an example of a long, more complex formula. Now, if you have a formula like this in a spreadsheet and maybe you send the spreadsheet to somebody else, if they're not that familiar with formulas, it might be quite hard for them to decipher what exactly is going on in this formula. So the first part of lambdas is to think about creating helpful variables, which are going to make this formula a lot easier to read. So what do I mean by variables? Well, if we take this formula as our example, we could declare two variables for this formula. For example, wherever we have the cell range C4 to C19, that's actually where I go in and I select my data range. So maybe you're used to using things like named ranges in your worksheets. We could give that specific cell range C4 to C19 its own name. And in this example, I've called it data. We could then create another variable called product, which represents the cell range D4 to D19. And maybe D4 to D19 contains a whole list of different products. Now, once we've declared those variables within our LAMBDA, we can then replace the cell references in the formula with those new user-friendly names. So our formula would end up looking something like this. Wherever we had C4 to C19, that's been replaced with data, and wherever we had D4 to D19, that's been replaced with product. So that's the sort of basic principle of a LAMBDA, and the next stage is that we could then take this entire sort by formula and wrap it up in a function that we create. So I could create my own function called, let's say, sort data, and I could use it on my data sets much like any other function. And that, my friends, is a LAMBDA. Now, I don't know about you, I'm a little bit bored of these PowerPoint slides. Let's dive into Excel where all of the action happens and take a look at a few examples. So we're going to start off with a super basic example, and then we're going to build from there. Now, in this first spreadsheet, you can see that I have a fairly standard data set. I have some product IDs in column B, I have some product names in column C, and I have a price for each of those products. Now, you'll also notice that in cell B1, I have a tax amount of 20%. So maybe I want to work out what the price is going to be when we have the 20% tax added onto the top. And this is a really straightforward calculation in Excel. So if we go into this cell, there are a couple of different ways that you could do this. I'm going to say we're going to open a bracket, we're going to do the price multiplied by the sales tax, and we can't forget to press F4 because we don't want that to move when we copy the formula down, and then we're going to add the price on top. Now, if you're wondering why I'm doing that, if I just had D4 multiplied by B1, it's going to give me the tax amount. So it's just going to give me whatever 20% of $37 is. If we want the actual price, including the tax, we need to add the price back on top. So when we hit enter, it gives me what I'm looking for, the price inclusive of tax, and then I can double click to copy that formula down. Fairly straightforward. Now, what about if I wanted to turn this into a lambda? Let's see what that would look like. I'm going to type in lambda as the column heading. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to say equals lambda. Now, you can see the argument that we have is parameter or calculation. Now, if you remember when we were looking at the PowerPoint slides, I told you that you need to declare variables. And what you name your variables is entirely up to you. So we're going to do the same calculation that we just did, but we're going to use variables. Now, in my calculation, the first part was basically cell D4, the price, multiplied by 20%. Now, instead of using the cell references, I'm going to name those cells. So for cell D4, we're going to call that price. I'm going to declare that up front. So now we need to proceed with our calculation. We're going to open a bracket, and this time we're going to do price multiplied by cell B4, where we have that 20%. We're going to F4 to lock, close the bracket, and then we're going to plus the price again and close off our lambda. So hopefully you can see what we're doing there. We're basically giving cell D4 a name of price, and then we're performing the same calculation. We're just replacing the cell reference with the variable that we've set up. Let's hit enter. I'm getting a calc error. Now, why am I getting a calc error? Let's double click to take a look at it. Well, I haven't actually told the formula which cell price refers to. So we're going to open a bracket and we're going to tell Excel that price means cell D4. Let's close the bracket, hit enter, check out what we get. Let's double click to copy that down. And we should find that we get exactly the same results. Let's take this formula a stage further. We're going to double click to edit, because what we could do here is also replace the cell reference B1 with a variable. So where we have our variables at the beginning, I'm going to click after price, and we're going to say that cell B1 is going to be tax. I can then go in and replace the cell reference with tax, and don't forget we need to make sure that we tell Excel which cell tax refers to. So that's going to be cell B1. F4 to lock, hit enter, double click to copy down, and we should find that we get exactly the same results. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. If we compare the two, so if I click on cell E4, this formula here is a lot shorter than the formula that we've just created, and I might add, a hell of a lot easier. But the point of doing this is so that we can automate this process. So what we could now do is we could set up our own function and use it when we're calculating the tax amount. Now, to do that, what we would do is we would set up our lambda as we have done here, and then we need to copy everything before where we've declared the variables at the end. So if I select all of this, Control C, what we're then going to do is go to the Formulas tab, Name Manager, we're going to create a new name, and let's paste Control V, our little formula in, and we can name this formula whatever we like. This is where we're effectively creating a new function for use in Excel. So I'm just going to call this price including tax and click on OK. So let's delete out everything that we have in here and use our new formula. If I type in equals, as soon as I start to type in price, you can see there it is. Let's press tab, check out the arguments. Those are the variables that we declared at the beginning, price and tax. So I can go in, I can select the price column, and then I just need to select the tax amount. Close the bracket, hit enter, check it out. All of my results are exactly the same. So we've taken a really basic formula and we've turned it into a more meaningful lambda. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you would need to go to this extent for very basic formulas, but hopefully you can see how this could be so useful when you're working with more complex formulas that you want to reuse over and over again in the worksheet. Because that's exactly what I can do. I can reuse this formula again on other datasets. And the cool thing is that this does automatically update. So if the sales tax changes, let's change it to 30%, you'll see that all of those formulas also update. So those are the basic principles behind a lambda. Let's take a look at another example. So this time I have a small data set. We have some people's names, we have their salaries, we have the department that they work in, and the region where they're located. Now maybe over here I want to just produce a list that is sorted, and I want to sort by their salary and the region. So what I'm going to do over here is we're going to use the sort by formula. First argument is our array that we want to sort, so that's everything that we have here, comma. Now we need to choose which array we want to sort by. So I want to sort by the salary first of all, so let's select that array. And then I get to choose the order, so ascending or descending. So let's go for ascending, and now it moves on to by array too. So if I want to sort by another column, I can then declare that. So next I want to sort by the region column, and again I want to sort in ascending order. Let's close the bracket, hit enter, and that's exactly what I get. So you can see these are now sorted in ascending order by salary and then by region. How do we know that that's worked? Well, if we look at Julio Roberts and Chad Pitt, they both have a salary of $36,000. But because our secondary sort is by region, you'll see that North comes first because N is before W in the alphabet. So I know that my sort is working correctly. Now this is a reasonable formula. It's not too complex or too long, but again, we could turn this into a lambda so that we can use this sort on other data sets. So let's set up our lambda. We're going to type in equals lambda. So the first thing we need to do is declare those variables right up front. And if you remember in the sort by formula, I basically selected 3 different ranges of cells. I selected all of the data, the salary data, and also the region data. So my first variable is going to be called data. My second variable I'm going to call salary, and my third variable I'm going to call region. Now we can type in sort by, and I can use those variables in the formula. So the first part of the sort by is to select the array. So what do you want to return? And I want to return everything. So I'm going to use data. I'm sorting by the salary column first of all. So we're going to type in salary. And we're sorting in ascending order. We just need a 1 in there. And then our second sort was to sort by region. So let's type that in, and again in ascending order. Let's close off our sort by, close off our lambda, and then we need to let Excel know which ranges of cells those 3 variables refer to. So our data variable refers to everything in this table. Our salary variable refers to the salary data, and our region variable refers to the region data. Close the bracket, hit enter. It's going to give us exactly the same result. So this formula is working. Now I don't want to leave it like this. I want to set this up as a user-friendly formula. So once again, we just need to copy everything in our lambda, excluding those cell ranges at the end. Control C to copy. We can go into the name manager, create a new name, and I'm going to paste this in, Control V, and I'm going to call this sort by salary region. Let's click on OK. Let's give it a go. Let's see if our function is working. I'm going to type in equals. There it is, sort by salary region, and there are my 3 arguments, data, salary, region. So this is now super simple. I know I just need to select my data. I then need to select the salary column, and finally the region column. Close the bracket, hit enter, and I get exactly the same result. Now I mentioned that one of the powerful things about lambdas is that you can reuse this new function on other datasets. Now, if I go down to here, you can see we have another data set that is different to the one we have above. We have product, price, region, and location. So maybe I want to sort this data set by price and location. Now, one thing to watch for here is I can use my formula. So if I start to type in sort by, there it is. But because of the way I've named those variables, data, salary, region, they're very specific to that first data set. So my recommendation would be that you make these variables a little bit more generic. So you might want to have data, sort 1, sort 2, so that people don't think that they're restricted to just the salary column and just the region column. But technically what I could do here is data, select all of my data, comma, salary, well, that can be whatever you want it to be really, so I'm going to go for price. And then region, I'm going to choose location just here, close the bracket, hit enter, and it's going to perform the sort. If I wanted to go back in and maybe modify these labels, I would need to go up to my name manager, edit my formula, and I'm going to change salary to sort 1. Let's change region to sort 2. And then of course we need to change that over here as well. So salary is going to be sort 1 and region is going to be sort 2. Click on OK. So now when we go to use that formula, it might make a little bit more sense, because the arguments are now data, sort 1, sort 2. So that's just a couple of little tips surrounding creating lambdas. Let's take a look at our final example. This time we're going to create a lambda that works with filter. So maybe I want to filter this list of the top grossing horror movies of all time for movies that were released in the year 2017. Now, when you get used to using Lambda, you can go straight in here and just start creating a Lambda. Sometimes I find it's better to kind of start at the end and work backwards. So a lot of the time what I would do is I would create my filter function first of all, make sure that's working correctly, and then I would wrap it in the Lambda. So let's do it that way in this example. So I want to filter everything in this data set. That is my first array. And I want to include where the year released, so this column, is equal to 2017. Now I'm just hard coding this into the formula. In general, the best way to work would be to have 2017 in another cell and reference the cell, or maybe have it in some kind of drop down list. But for quickness sake, we're just going to add it straight in there. And then the final argument is what to show if it can't find any matching records. So if there was nothing in this list for the year 2017, I want it to show the words no records. Let's close off our filter and make sure that that's working first of all. Yes, it is. It's returning the 4 movies that were released in the year 2017. So now I know this formula is working, I'm going to wrap it in a lambda. And I think let's do this up in the formula bar because it's a little bit clearer. So we're going to type in lambda. Now take a look at our filter formula. I have 2 cell ranges that I've selected. B3 to E22, which was all of the data, and then E3 to E22, which is the year released. So again, my first variable is going to be data, and my second variable, I'm just going to call it year, like so. So now I can go in and replace B3 to E22 with data, and E3 to E22 with year. Don't forget to go to the end. We need to close off our lambda, but then we need to tell Excel what cell ranges those variables relate to. So the data variable relates to this cell range, and the year variable relates to this range just here. Let's close the bracket, hit enter, and I'm still getting the same result, which means that it's working. Let's copy everything, Control C. Go to the name manager, we should be used to doing this by now, click new, we're going to paste that in, and we're going to create our own custom formula. Filter movies, and we'll call this 2017. And click on OK. Let's test it out and see if it works. There it is. And we have data and year. So let's select our first range, and let's select our second range, close the bracket, hit enter, and we get exactly the same result. So guys, that is how LAMBDA works. I hope that this video has made the whole entire process slightly less confusing. The thing with LAMBDA, as with most things in Excel, is just to practice on different types of data. But I hope you agree with me that this is a really powerful, game-changing formula. And it's also super fun when you can create your own formulas and use them in your worksheets. If you enjoyed this video, then you know what to do. Like it, subscribe, leave me a little comment, let me know what you think, and I will see you next time.